wants to fail. If you're someone who fears failure and tries to avoid it at any cost, then stick with me for this video because I'm going to talk about how that's holding you back from realizing your potential and what you can do about it. Hello, my name is Michael Dewan Herrick. I'm a psychotherapist and a life coach with over 40 years of experience, and I can say, having worked with thousands of people, that fear of failure is a challenge that can cause a blockage in our progress toward any endeavor. Being able to overcome it gives us nothing short of a superpower. So please do stick with me for this video. I'm going to share with you a way to think about failure that can allow you to overcome it, and then you'll be able to take more bold actions toward your goals and your dreams. Okay, so let's get started. So what happens if we fear failure so much that we try to avoid it at any cost? I'm going to name two main things that I see happen. The first is that we don't make any big plans. We don't have big dreams. We don't aspire to much because the world is unpredictable, and because any bold thing that we do has risks that we would like to avoid. We play it safe. We just do what we have to do to get by and take as few risks as possible. That's the first thing we can do. Not even set out on a bold path, on a daring path. The second thing we can do, we might imagine things that we would like to accomplish and aspire to, but we think about it a long, long time. We think and think and think. We overthink. I've heard it called analysis paralysis. What we imagine is that we could come up with a perfect plan. We could anticipate every possible thing that could go wrong and develop a contingency plan in case that happens. And because the number of things that can go wrong is infinite, this can take a very long time. For instance, it could take an eternity. It could take forever. It could actually be that we don't set out. We have good intentions and we've given it a lot of thought, but we just don't have the courage to take the risk of failure. Do either of these two ways of dealing with the fear of failure sound familiar to you? Can you relate to them? If not, you probably don't need to listen to the rest of this video. But if they sound familiar to you, keep listening. What I'm going to talk about is why the desperate attempt to avoid failure doesn't work. It simply doesn't work, and provide a way forward. The title of this video is Failure is Not an Option, It's a Necessity. I thought of this last week, came to mind, and I thought, well, maybe somebody else has thought of this. So I'm going to confess, I'm not the first or the only one who's thought of this very phrase. I did Google it and find that there are a few other people who say the same thing, which is great. I wasn't surprised because I think when you get it, it's an obvious truth. So while I'm saying it's a necessity, I'm not going to say that we are going to set out and try to fail. We're going to try to succeed. In the attempt to succeed, we will fail. It's inevitable. Not every time will we fail spectacularly, but along the way we're going to fail, and we should get used to it. We should embrace it. That there's something to be learned with each failure, which is, I'm sure, not a new idea to you. So what is the most effective way to deal with failure and our fear of it? First, as I've mentioned, we can accept that it's inevitable. But then, when it happens, we can get curious. What happened? What assumptions had we made that led to us failing? What part of our plan was incomplete or inaccurate? What could we do to improve that? What's a new truth that we learned because of the failure that erases the false assumption we had when we started? And the bigger the failure, the more there is to learn. We go back to the drawing board, so to speak, and rethink things, taking into account what we can understand about the reasons that we failed. I've heard it said, don't only fail spectacularly. Now, I don't think, as I said, we're going to try to fail spectacularly, but if we do, and we're curious, and we really study it, we're going to learn a lot. So in this way, failure, as we typically tend to think about it, isn't failure at all. Each failure is merely a stepping stone on the path to success. So far, I may not have said anything that you haven't already heard in other words, and you may feel that I'm only telling you things you already know. But I do have a metaphor / example to offer that I think will illuminate things in a new way for you. Now, there are plenty of examples of wildly successful people, famously successful people who failed in spectacular ways. One of my favorite is of Thomas Edison, the famous inventor of the light bulb. When asked what it was like to fail 1,000 times at making a light bulb, he said, I didn't fail 1,000 times at making a light bulb. There's different ways that it said. I read one where he said, I discovered 1,000 ways not to make a light bulb. I saw another where it said, I didn't fail at making the light bulb 1,000 times. There were 1,000 steps to inventing the light bulb. Either way, the point is the same. He wasn't turned back by 1,000 failures. I'd invite you to Google and to look up examples of this. I've read many and I find them very inspiring. The people that we most admire and think were just either geniuses or lucky turn out that they were just perseverant. They didn't get turned back by failure or fear of failure. Now I want to provide an example that I think also serves as a metaphor for how failure provides us with information that ultimately allows us to succeed. This example and metaphor is an illustration of something called a cybernetic feedback loop. This term was coined, I believe it was in 1947, by a mathematician and philosopher named Norbert Wiener, and it addresses how information is fed back into any system, including the human mind, in a way that modifies and controls behavior. The anthropologist Gregory Bateson later offered this example and metaphor that I'm going to share with you. Imagine the process of chopping down a tree. If you've half chopped down a tree, then this will make good sense to you. If you haven't, it'll be easy to imagine and it'll still make great sense. What we don't do, what can't be done, actually, when we chop down a tree, is to make a perfect plan that's very precise and determines exactly where each blow of the axe will land and how much force we'll use each time and how many strikes it'll take to topple the tree. That can't be done. What we do is we stand before the tree and we hold our axe and we look where we want to hit the tree and we swing and we hit approximately where we want it to. Then we withdraw the axe and look at the tree and see what did we do? What mark did we make? The next time we swing the axe, we approximate the next strike based on what we've already done. And each successive swing of the axe is preceded by looking at what's happened so far. Each time we've swung the axe, in some ways, we failed. We failed to hit it exactly where we wanted to. We didn't execute a plan that was premeditated. It's a process that involves continual feedback loops so that we know what to do next. And we proceed that way until finally we topple the tree. We succeed in chopping the tree down, but depending on how big that tree is and how long it takes, that success came after perhaps hundreds of minor failures. If you happen to be a lumberjack and you've chopped down many trees, you might get very good, you might get very precise at where you strike the tree. But you don't get to be an expert lumberjack right off the bat. You have to go through the process of failing and correcting and failing and correcting and correcting and correcting each failure until you hone your skill. And even then, there's some margin of error. But it's not a problem. It's just a part of the process. Hopefully you get the point that succeeding is a process of taking in information based on failures. It's not what we can do by having a perfect plan that premeditates every step of the way and then executes that plan precisely. What I really like about this example is that it's so clear. It's so obvious. It's obvious that it would be silly to think you could chop down a tree in any other way. Funnily enough, though, we tend to think the other things in our lives aren't the same, that somehow we could have a perfect plan and avoid all mistakes and all errors and all failures and just cut straight through to an immediate success. But just like chopping down a tree, everything else that we do goes through the same process. Tom Peters, who co-authored In Search of Excellence with Bob Waterman, came up with the phrase, ready, shoot, aim. If you think about it, that's a very pithy way to say exactly what I'm saying. It addresses the tendency that we can have to overthink things, to want to have the perfect aim and fire off one shot and get it just right. It encourages us to take the risk of getting it wrong and having to aim or make a correction after taking action. It gets us to take action. I guess that's the primary point. What a fear of failure does is it paralyzes us from taking action. Seeing that it's a vital part of our success allows us to actually take action. So hopefully I've made my point that failure is not an option, it's a necessity. And may you rouse the courage that you need in order to overcome your fears and take action on the goals and dreams that would make your life more meaningful. May you even come to welcome failure and embrace it as a learning opportunity. And may you take a long journey down that path of failures toward many, many great successes. If you like this video, please give it a like, subscribe to my channel, share the video with friends, and leave me comments below. You'll find links, one link to my online store called Attention Bazaar. You can also see links there for products like coffee mugs, t-shirts, and tote bags with the slogan, failure is not an option, it's a necessity. And finally, there's a link for my psychotherapy and life coaching practice in case you'd like to check that out. That's all for now. Thanks for sticking with me to the end, and I hope to see you in the next video. So long.